We all know it's not a secret. I'm a movie junkie. It's not a secret. But there was one thing that I could not stand, even when I was little, was musicals. I could not get, like, how do they all know to start dancing at the same time and start singing at the same time? Even as a kid, I was like, I can't do it. I just can't. So, of course, the Lord, don't tell him what you don't like, especially when you're a disciple. Hallelujah. So, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and read Acts 17, verse 24 through 34. It's pretty long, so I'm just going to go ahead and read it. And I'm going to read it in the Message because I'm a messenger. Some of you are kings, so you like King James, but I'm a messenger, so there you go. Acts 17, verse 24-34 says, let's just go into a little bit. Paul is in Athens. He has seen a bunch of idols, and he has taken the opportunity, like only Paul can. He stopped at a statue, it says, for the unknown God. So he's taken this opportunity, of course, to do what Paul does, and we're going to start with what Paul is saying. The God who made the world and everything in it, this master of sky and land, doesn't live in custom-made shrines or need the human race to run errands for him as if he couldn't do it for himself. He makes the creatures don't make him. Starting from scratch, he made the entire human race and made the earth hospitable with plenty of time and space for living so we could seek after God and not just grope around in the dark but actually find him. He doesn't play hide and seek with us. He's not remote. He's near. We live and move in him, can't get away from him. One of your poets said it well. We're the God created. Well, if we're the God created, it doesn't make much sense to think that we could hire a sculptor to chisel a God out of stone for us, does it? God overlooks it as long as you don't know any better, but that time is past. The unknown is now known. He's calling for a radical life change. He has set a day when the entire human race will be judged and everything set right. He has already appointed the judge, confirming him before everyone by raising him from the dead. Now, at that phrase, raising him from the dead, the listeners split. Some laughed at him and walked off making jokes. Others said, hey, let's do this again. We want to hear more. But that was it for the day, and Paul left. Okay, so if you've been in this church any while or you read the Bible, you know that there was just something different about this adventure of Paul. This wasn't the usual, this wasn't the norm of what happens with Paul. He is our superhero of the Bible, outside of Jesus. He's like all human, so it's like, wow, he's up there. So we look to him as he is the superhero, this is how it's done. So there's a few things that are kind of alarming about this passage. Paul never mentions a church resulting in his work in Athens. That's very highly unusual because everywhere he went, like I said, he was the superhero. Only a very few people became believers, and as far as we know, he did not contact them again. The few did not multiply into more, and the most alarming thing, Paul was not persecuted, nor was he forced to leave. That's quite unusual. He's usually kicked out real quick, okay? As a matter of fact, Acts 18:1 says that Paul just left and he went on to Corinth. So if you glance back over the previous chapters, like I said, if you've done any reading, you can count the times that Paul has run into little opposition. Very few times. But you'll search in vain and you really won't find another experience like Athens. One of the questions that I was thinking was, why didn't he get persecuted? And the answer is because the people in Athens were just too cold to care. Paul's experience is a perfect example of a situation in which people were open-minded to a fault. The people in Athens, their motto was, anything goes. Times have changed, and we've often rewound the clock since the Puritans got a shock when they landed on Plymouth Rock. If today Plymouth Rock they should try to stem, instead of landing on Plymouth Rock, Plymouth Rock would land on them. In old olden days, a glimpse of stalking was looked on as something shocking. Now heaven knows anything goes. Good authors, too, who once knew better words, now only use four-letter words, writing prose. Anything goes. The world has gone mad today, and good's bad today, and black's white today, and day's night today, and those guys today that women prize today, just silly gigolos. Although I'm not a great romancer, I know that I'm bound to answer when you propose. Anything goes. Thank you. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We think we've got it bad here, but Athens was the original birthplace of the tolerance movement. Everyone was welcome to their own philosophy. They said live and let live. If it works for you, go for it. We don't care. So, my question again is, which is worse? When you're persecuted, or people just don't care? They didn't care if Paul stayed or left. They believed everyone was entitled to their own God. A few sneered. Others were polite enough to say, well, maybe we'll come back and listen. It's not hurting us any. But most of them never really cared. This study of Paul kind of turned, like I said, my little superhero thing upside down. Because many times, and we're guilty of this too, and if you're not, just ignore what I'm saying, we hear, blessed are the persecuted. So as long as you're after me, I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Matter of fact, that's my gauge. Like, oh, you don't like me? That's great, because I'm a Christian. Matter of fact, I just got into the Facebook again with some of my family. And I was like, wearing my badge of, you're only coming after me because I'm a Christian. Ha, ha, ha. You know, that was my badge. So a lot of times we get into that, like, blessed are the persecuted, so I'm going for that. But then we forget, or we don't even realize that there's a quieter dragon in the den, and that is the spirit of indifference. Christianity can grow and flourish under some of the most difficult oppositions, and that's what we're used to seeing with Paul, but it will prosper very little when people refuse to be changed by it. No matter how much Pastor Paul wants it, if you're not having it, there's nothing he can do about it. He can preach till he's blue in the face. Maybe I'll come back. Maybe I won't. We'll see. No matter how many times Brother Blair knocks on your door, you ain't got to answer it. He's not going to come back and knock it down. You can just ignore him. He'll go away. Maybe I'll answer it. Maybe I won't. Paul's experience in Athens proves that even the best sermon, even the ones on TV that I heard several times before I was ready to change, I heard them all, even the best sermon will not change an unwilling heart. So let's just look at how this visit affected him. Like we said, for a recap, few people accepted Christ. He was overwhelmed by the residents' beliefs because they wanted to argue philosophies. If you go into a little deeper, he did not get his badge of persecution because it kind of knocked him off his game. No church was established, and he got a little frustrated. He just kind of moved on. You know, it was not the norm. So sometimes when all those things happen and we get a little frustrated, you can lose focus. You can start thinking about the negative instead of all the positive things that are going. He could have easily said, and maybe he did, I don't know. He could have easily just been focusing on what went wrong instead of what went right. He could have decided that nothing good came out of Athens at all. When we do this, we can fall into insecurity. Insecurity can turn to immobilization. Immobilization can turn into intimidation, and intimidation can turn into straight terror. If Paul was anything like us mere mortals, think about how many times he thought about that, I know me and my husband are guilty of this. We'll, after this is over, we'll say, oh man, I should have said that. Oh, I should have done that scripture. That would have done it. Oh my God, why didn't I say that? And it doesn't even have to be teaching. Like, think about when you got into it with somebody, before you were saved, you're like, oh, I should have shut him down with that one. Oh, he would have never said nothing to me again. I should have shut him down. Wake up in the middle of the night, I should have said. Or you tell someone, they go, well, I would have said, I'm like, oh, I should have said that. You know, how many times have you done that? So Paul, regular human being, think about this kind of messed with him a little bit. Some of the scholars suggested that Paul might have felt intimidated by the Athenians because Athens was filled with intellectuals who could debate eloquently and were eager to flaunt their knowledge. As he tried to preach, the academically elite were not impressed. Not only did they dispute with him, they laughed at him. They sneered at him. It wasn't even a ha, ha, ha laugh. It was like, you're crazy kind of laugh, you know? Paul was the elite. He was the pride of his graduating class. Everybody knew Paul was smart. Like I said, this is our superhero we are talking about. Can you imagine the beating that his ego took just from this trip in Athens? You know, it's like he is on a mission and they kind of shut him down. Matter of fact, if you turn to 1 Corinthians, you don't have to turn there because I'm out of time, but if you want to study it later. 1 Corinthians 2, verse 3 tells us that when Paul got to Corinthians, he said, "It was with you, I was with you in weakness and in fear and in much trembling." The word weakness comes from the original word used for a sickness. It suggests that Paul was so scared by the time he worked himself up and got to Athens that he was physically ill. He had lost his confidence. Paul was a very confident person. He lost his confidence. So that's how much he relied on it. It made him physically ill, and there's further things when you break down the words that his hands were trembling for his next public appearance in Corinth. But God. We always got to remember, but God. Because if you go back, 1 Corinthians 2, and you start in verse 1, it says, Paul says, "You'll remember, friends, that when I came to you to let you in on God's masterstroke, I didn't try to impress you with polished speeches and the latest philosophy. I deliberately kept it plain and simple. First Jesus and who he is, then Jesus and what he did. Jesus crucified." So by the time he ran himself to the ringer and he reached Corinth, he was determined to know nothing except Jesus Christ and him crucified. And that's really all that he really had to know. So it didn't work, devil. It didn't work. So I hope that seeing this new experience of Paul has helped you as a fellow believer. Like I said, we didn't want to knock him down off his superhero status, but we just want to elevate us to be superhero status as well. I, for one, didn't know that Paul had feelings. I'm going to be honest. I just thought he was, let's go. I don't care what you're going through. Get your butt up there and go preach. I was happy to know that the man had feelings. I'm happy to know this. It makes me go, yeah, I didn't want to read about Paul. It took me the longest time because I just thought he was just a crack that whip and get out there. I don't care what you're going through. You know what I'm saying? I don't respond very well to that. I need some feelings. I'm a girl. I mean, come on. The enemy would have enjoyed preventing Paul from ministering because of his feelings of inadequacy. But once again, he didn't win. Satan is not going to win. The Lord once again showed us that despite your frustration, despite your circumstances, despite the lies you were being told, the show must go on. Business like God's message, like no message I know. Everything about it is appealing. Everything your spirit will allow. Nowhere will you get that happy feeling when God tells you, you take a bow. There's no people like God's people. They smile when they are low. Even with the teaching that's outside the mold, you may be scared, but do what you're told. Still, you wouldn't change it for a sack of gold, so go on with the show. That's it.